AI consultancy company. And I wanted also to mention that the two other organizations that I'm associated with, LFAI and Data. This is an open source organization that I co-founded 7 years ago, even more than 7 years ago, which is an open source nonprofit organization for AI projects. This is one, and we worked on this framework that I will talk about as part of the activities there. And the other one is NIST, National Institute for Startup and Technologies. I'm part of the ASIC, AI Safety Institute Consortium. This is basically the US government attempt to define AI safety and to give the industry the guidelines about AI safety. So I bring quite a lot of experience and relevant knowledge in this domain. And also I wanted to mention that I am married and we have 3 kids. We live outside of New York City. And as you can see, AI is not perfect because this picture was taken 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, and I didn't look that young back then. So we have some more development to do here. So let's jump into what LFAI and Data is. So this is a non-for-profit organization. We host critical components of the global AI and data technology infrastructure, open source. And we bring together all the relevant stakeholders, the developers, users, vendors, to identify and contribute to projects and initiatives that address industry challenges for the benefit of all. And basically, the Linux Foundation, which is probably the largest open source organization in the world, is hosting projects. And in the past, I don't know, a decade or two, they have working groups in different domains. CNCF is one of the most famous or the biggest organization. This is a cloud native organization, and the Linux Foundation AI is a relatively newer organization, and we host most of the open source AI projects. Basically, the organization is divided into 2 elements. One side, we have the projects, the open source projects, and on the other side, we have the committees and the working groups. So let's start with some key statistics about the organization. So founded officially in March 18, we have 73 members, 2,300 contributing organizations. So you don't have to be a member to contribute to open source. And this is something that we can see here. Generated almost 250 million line of code across by something like 50,000 contributors across 67 projects. We have something like 3,000 people on Slack. Combined, all those projects combined have almost 300,000 GitHub stars, and we run 11 committees. Let's see a little bit about the projects, the open source projects. So we run an AI landscape where we basically have all the try to have many of the open source projects in AI. And we have a special way to show that they are LFAI projects. So if you see the box here, this is an LFAI project. Still, the LFAI is a small portion of the global open source AI projects. But this is a tool, the AI landscape is a tool that you are welcome to try. It's pretty interactive and nice to play with. These are the projects. There are some more known than others. Some of the organizations that host projects with us. You can see here many big names. Still missing some of the bigger names or some of the big names. I would love to see here Google, for example, that does have an open source project, but it's not bad. We have quite a lot of contributors. Any questions so far? Okay, let's move on. So I said that the Linux Foundation is built on the one side the projects, and the other side are the committees, the governance and the committees. And basically the structure is pretty simple. We have the governing board with the outreach, legal, strategy, and budget committees. We have the technical advisory council. This is where we run many of the activities and where we accept new projects to the foundation. When we started the foundation, when we founded it in 2019, I served as the technical chair. So basically ran this committee for a while. And we have ML security, ML ops, ML workflow, data ops committees. And recently, it's not that recently, like almost 18 months, we run what is called the Generative AI Commons, where we run all of the activities associated with generative AI. And this is where I'm active mostly currently. And just to be clear, this is an open source organization. I'm personally volunteering there. Most of the members, no, all of the members are the people that are doing stuff are volunteering. There's a few employees that help us to run the activities. But everything here is all of the activities that you will see, all people that volunteer their time because they believe in what we are doing. So let's zoom into the Generative AI Commons. So we are structured in 3 different working groups. One is the MED, Model, Application, and Data, where we work on different initiatives in this domain. Next, we have the Education and Outreach. This is a committee that I am leading, and we are focused on education. On the one hand, educating the developer community about open source AI. So we promote open source AI with the developer community, but also we believe in the democratization of AI and generative AI, and this is also something that we are investing time in. We do different activities to the general public, to our parents and kids and people that are less knowledgeable about the technology. And the third one is the Responsible AI committee, where we run many different activities associated with responsible AI. And one of them is the Responsible Generative AI Framework that I will talk about in a minute. One interesting thing, so when I was the first chair of the foundation, or the technical chair of the foundation, I basically built the Responsible AI working group or committee. It was late 2018 or early 2019. And back then, it was pretty hard to hold meetings because there was not a lot of interest in responsible AI. We did many different activities. We tried to promote it, but still not a lot of activity, not a lot of traction. And lately, and when I say lately, probably soon after ChatGPT came out, many projects, many companies wanted to join the activities, the responsible AI activities, and we had to move from one meeting a month that is in many cases been canceled because we don't have agenda, because we don't have enough people to join, to doing it every other week and sometimes even more. And in each meeting we have couple of dozens, if not more than that, of people, rather than only a few before that. So there is a lot of traction, a lot of activities, and I really hope it will continue like that. So let's jump into the responsible generative AI framework. And maybe I will stop now if anyone has any question about the Linux Foundation AI.
I'll have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I think something that a lot of us might be wondering is what might the relationship be between open source AI as opposed to closed source AI? I guess while you and I know why open source is so powerful, it might be a little interesting to think about, I guess, the implications of closed source AI. But yeah.
So you're correct, and maybe we can talk about it. Are you asking about closed source in general, or in specifically about responsible AI or generative AI?
I think contextually, yeah, contextually within AI.
Contextually with responsible AI or in general?
Responsible AI.
Yeah,
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, this framework is there is a focus on open source, or the focus of how open source helps with responsible AI. But this framework is not necessarily only focused on open source. Closed source project can basically check themselves across this definition and this framework. And there is a huge debate about the safety associated with open source or closed source. It's a debate, and I would say bigger or more experienced and more important people than me have different views, and we can tap to it later when we talk about different things.
Okay. One more question might be, NIST has some AI framework, so I guess I'd be wondering about the proliferation of standards. How do you see one AI governance framework, or do you see multiple organizations making frameworks for their own needs? And I guess follow up on that is, what kind of adoption is LFAI seeing so far among, like, I guess, labs or smaller dev teams?
That's a great question, because I have a slide about it, and I will answer, but you will see it again. Basically, there is kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say kind of a framework war, because we have different frameworks coming from different jurisdictions, different locations around the world. And basically, we try to be, an open source non-profit organization that has no, we don't have any specific agenda, rather than to bring responsible AI. And we hope that this one will harmonize the different activities. But this is a part of the reason that we created it, because there are different opinions, and for sure. Even within a specific jurisdiction, let's take the US, the approach we had until January and the approach that we have now is completely different. And we hope to be able to influence. And by the way, part of our activities, my activity at NIST, is part of the Linux Foundation AI. So we promote these responsible elements or dimensions.
Okay, so there's you are the relationship between the organizations. Okay,
yes.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense.
I am the relationship between the organization and a couple of other people are as well. But also we have representatives from different countries, or maybe I'll say it now. It's really important to have a very broad perspective here. And this is why you can see 23 authors to this paper, because or contributors, because we wanted the perspective around the world. We have people that are or were part or our part of the European Union regulation, from India, from China, from many different locations, because we thought it's really important to have all those voices brought in. So this is the responsible generative AI framework.
Just a second, Ofer.
Yes.
Hi, just a question.
Yes.
You just mentioned one word that triggered the question. Is the end goal eventually to create some sort of regulation, so like new Gen AI companies will have to comply with, same like, I don't know, GDPR or?
The answer is no. The Linux Foundation is not a standard or regulation organization. We really hope, though, that companies will take this framework and comply with it even without any regulation. We have some ideas about giving badges or something like that, but this is for sure not a regulation effort. We do try to influence other regulation bodies, but we are not regulator ourselves. Okay, so just in a few words about the structure of this framework, we start with why we need the framework, and this answers the previous question. Then we discuss the 9 dimensions that create this framework. We have quite a lot of discussion about the different framework out there, the EU AI Act, the NIST guidelines, the Singapore AI strategy, and the China AI development plan. So we try to take frameworks and analyze them from the different jurisdictions. We recognize that AI is not only the model. The model is nice, but there are many other moving elements when we build solutions with AI. And this is something that I will not get into it, but it is part of the paper. And then we talk about the pathways. So what we published this last week, I think. And what is the next step for this? And as I mentioned, done by a diverse group of people, and we have a focus on open source, but it's not only about open source. Okay, so let's jump into why a standard definition is important. So I think we talked about it quite a lot. Give me a second to move something here. And basically, the idea is to achieve alignment on a global scale, and basically to, in a way, combat the race for responsible AI framework, and to give the different jurisdictions idea, and maybe they will be aligned with this framework. And let's move to the actual dimensions. So this is these are the 9 dimensions that this framework is composed of. I will talk about each one of them, not in too length, but please interrupt if you have any questions. So the first one is human-centered and aligned. Basically, we want the AI model or system to be aligned with human values, and basically to serve us. One, maybe many, would claim that alignment is really hard to achieve. Even alignment, to achieve alignment with different cultures is very hard. Even within a specific culture or country or city, there are different opinions. And this one is not very, as you will see, the others are not very easy as well. But this one is pretty interesting and not easy to achieve. And this is also why we believe that a diverse group of designers and to work on this this framework. The second one is accessible and inclusive. So basically, we want the technology to be accessible to all. This is something that is important to me personally, and this is why I invest my time volunteering as part of the Education and Outreach Committee, and why I'm doing many talks about AI and generative AI to different communities and around the world. And if anyone has any question, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. Robust, reliable, and safe. Again, not something that is easy to achieve. The systems are very complex. The models themselves are very complex, but this is something that we want to try to achieve. Transparent and explainable. So basically, we want the AI systems or the models to be transparent and explainable. This is something that is not very easy to achieve, as the models themselves are kind of a black box. There is a lot of effort around the world to try to explain it. Two points about this one. The reasoning models are a step, some of them at least, and those that really share the actual steps that they are taking. This is one step in that direction of transparency and explainability, but this is only on the level of steps. And the other point here is that open source has a crucial role in being something that is transparent and explainable. And open source has many shades. And we will talk about it a little bit later, but basically this is a very important step into the right direction in that term. Any questions? Okay, let's continue. Accountable, rectifiable. So basically this is another element or another dimension. And there is a very interesting question here. Who is accountable of the outcome of an AI system? This question was raised early on when companies started to work on self-driving car, for example. Who is accountable if there is a problem, if there is an accident? Is this the model builder? Is this the application developer? Or maybe this is the hardware developer, or the system integrator, or the regulation, or the country? Is it the end user? So, and you can think about many different systems and many bad outcomes that can come out of AI systems. And accountability is really, really important and needs to be taken care of when we build AI systems. Privacy and security, of course, we want to protect the data and make sure the data is kept safe. Compliant and controllable. This is another dimension. And again, compliant is a very interesting discussion. Some say that it's much easier to make AI compliant because it's a code or a model that basically, if we give it a very clear directions, it will follow it. So some say it is easier to make AI agents compliant rather than people, because it's really easy. If we give them the instructions, they will follow it. And I would argue with this claim. One, because maybe the AI system has some other guidelines that are contradicting the guideline that we will give it. and because we cannot always give all the instructions. I'm sure that many of you heard about the game, the chess game between the OpenAI model. I don't remember. I think it was 01 or 03. I don't remember. A chess game between that and the leading chess app in the world. And of course, who would you think? Who do you think won the game between the OpenAI model and the specific AI app, the #1 AI app in chess? Anyone want to guess?
Yes, the AI model. It's not a guess. I read about it.
So
cheated.
Basically, I would guess that the specific chess app would win, but the OpenAI model won the game, and the way that the OpenAI managed to win the game is by changing the configuration file of the chessboard and putting himself or itself in a winning position, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. Thank you, Dvir. Kind of crazy. On the one hand, the goal was to win the game, and the model won the game. It's easy. There were probably no guidelines, don't change configuration file. But for us, it seems like, of course, you don't change the configuration file. You just need to play by the rules. But maybe it is really hard to give all the instructions, and this is why making those models and those system compliant is really, really hard and not trivial. Any questions on this or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Ofer, it's kind of a tricky subject, but according to what you said, for example, in a case where you have let's say the model developer, right? For example, Google. I was on this demo where they showed how Gemini, I think Gemini 2.5, it can quite perfectly impersonate or play the role of a salesperson and get on a call with the client and talk to him like a human and get him to renew his insurance. Okay. And when they discuss guardrails, right? Because, for example, how do you make sure this sales agent he talks properly, right? He's not too aggressive or uses foul language. And what he said, the guy from Google, that yeah, there are guardrails or a guardrail mechanism, but they trust their users and customers to set the guardrails.
Yeah, that's funny, and maybe we'll eventually we'll find great solutions for guardrails. But my personal experience, and I've built quite a lot of systems, it is really hard to put guardrails. I personally don't know like a way to seal all the holes, and I don't think that anyone knows that yet. I don't know if we have anyone on the call that has a great experience and wants to share some ideas about that. Yeah,
I think like
I
think like something that is bulletproof. Even cyber companies don't have a bulletproof protection. So the aim here is to do the best you can and hope for the best. So I guess you'll take it one step at a time and see what you can block, finding out more holes that you can close.
Yeah. So this is one option, which is it's fine. This is what we are doing now, but in many cases, I would argue that there are still solutions or areas where you don't want to use chatbot, for example, without the appropriate guardrails, because it's too dangerous. So I would not allow, for example, or I would try to avoid a chatbot or something that gets input from a user on a self-driving car. So or maybe if we have an AI doctor, we need to be very, very careful about what they say. We've seen a few suicide attempts or even more than that by people that use the AI as a therapist. So we need to really consider the risks associated with the use case and then decide whether it's safe enough for that specific use case. Okay, let's move on. And we are almost done with the dimensions. Ethical and fair. And again, this is not something that is trivial. None of them are trivial. And we talked about it earlier. Let's move on. Oh, want to move? Okay. And the last one is the environment and sustainability. Basically, one query, at least this is what I checked a couple of months ago. One ChatGPT query with 100 words, for example, cost half a liter of water or 16 ounces, which is a lot. And when we build AI systems, we need to consider that as well. We need to make sure that we take sustainability into account, because we only have one world to live in for now. So this is important, although many claim that AI will be the solution for all of the problems that we have on Earth. So let's hope. So these are the 9 dimensions. Yes.
Okay. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see a dimension tackling the, how do you call this? IP, or, for artists or whatever. Creativity, protection, whatever.
Let's see where it fits. Maybe it fits here. Ethical, it's part of ethical. So IP is an important thing. I think that most of the AI companies are not very ethical, and they use all of our data without asking. And this is a huge concern. I think it will take several years before it will be settled. But with the current government, I think they will get a free pass on our data. This is my assumption. We don't know. Not in Europe, but in the US.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, I think art would probably fit under diverse training data sets and diverse perspectives to some degree. But I think the broader point to Avi's question would be, as it seems the Linux Foundation AI's priority is steering as opposed to limiting capability development. There are some AI safety orgs that are like, stop building, and I don't really think that's practical, right? So it's if we're already in a place where Stable Diffusion is out there, a lot of the harm has already been done. So like Pandora's box is open, so to speak.
Yeah, and the basic idea of open source is to promote humanity. Like like the entire internet revolution happened because of open source. And this is, again, the same idea here. We believe that if everything will be closed source, it will be controlled by a few giant companies that will have all the power. And if there is open source out there, it democratizes the domain. So this is it. Avi, did you want to ask anything else?
No, it's okay. Let's continue.
Okay, thank you. So moving forward, taking all of these ideas to the next phase, we defined to ourselves 4 pillars of what is next. And basically, the idea is, okay, this is published. What's next? We have four different activities, and basically, we want to promote this and make sure that people are aware about it, and companies and projects are aligned with the framework. In conclusion, I want to invite you to join us. I think it is an amazing opportunity to anyone to contribute to these activities. This link is to our Join Us presentation with all the information about how to connect to the Generative AI Commons activities. And we have a few more minutes. I want to spend very quickly about another activities that we have, which is called MOF, Model Openness Framework. And this is basically our attempt to define openness, or openness in terms of open source for models. There was a 2 years long process by the OSI, Open Source Initiative, to define open source AI. They concluded, I was part of the activity as well. It was a global effort to define open source AI. They concluded the first version in October last year. But there is still huge discussion about what is open source and what is open in AI. There are many companies that endorsed the definition, but many others that didn't. And the main point of discussion was about data, whether data has to be open sourced or not. And basically the official open source AI definition says that data doesn't have to be open, which is interesting. So we did or worked on this, the model openness framework, in order to create some understanding in the market about what is open. And we evaluate it across different elements of the model. So we have code, data, and documentation. And basically, we identified all those elements that you can see here. And for each one of them, we decide the level of openness that we need in different levels of, or different openness classes. So we have a class 3, which is open model. Class 2 is open tooling, and class 1, which is the highest class, not in this diagram, but the highest class is the open science model, where everything, all of the elements here are really open source. And we also defined, so basically open science, the last one, class 1, is one that also the data sets, the data coming with the model and all the other elements associated with the data are all open sourced. And this is something that is even more, this is more ambitious than the official open source definition. And basically, the open source definition, the OSI open source definition, basically did the analysis based on the components that we identified as part of this effort. I hope I am clear. I'm trying to run fast here. And we also defined the different licenses. So there is a huge confusion. Some publish data sets or weights under Apache 2, which is not a license associated with data. It's a license associated with code. And here we basically explain what are the different licenses associated with each and every element. So this is a very, in my opinion, very important contribution that we made, and this is also part of the Generative AI Commons. We published it, and this is quite used by the industry. Yes, Dvir.
Thank you. Are you saying that the model weights should be treated under a license of data, not license of code? Understood you correctly?
Let's see. Model weight, model parameter. Yeah. So it's I don't have the. I think it's CCBY4. I'm missing some stuff here. Maybe this is not the most updated slide, but I will check it and come back to you. I'm almost positively sure that yes.
I see, because I would expect it to be like essentially a program, which means
no, weights are not program. So maybe they have a specific different license. I'm not sure. Michael, maybe you can help me. I hope you're still there. Maybe you can find a more updated version of this one. You know what? Why? Let's go to this page and check.
That's actually a pretty interesting distinction. You know, like the difference between model weights and like, I know that, and the Apache Foundation. What I was going to say is I know that the Llama license by Meta has been a little controversial because
yes.
My understanding is that they portray it as being 100% open source, but it isn't quite. Do you maybe have some thoughts on that?
So it's not open source. Basically, based on the definition of open source AI, even the definition coming from the OSI, this is for sure not open source or not an open source license, because there are restrictions coming with the model, and they don't open everything. They open the weights. It's an open weights model, but they don't give you all the details about the techniques that they take. They don't open the data. They don't open the, and they have restrictions. Even on the model itself, they have restrictions. So this is not an open source model.
So they are class 3?
They are not even class 3.
So sorry to distract what you're doing right now, but so what is currently the most open source model available?
There are several models in class 1. We also have a tool. Let me show you the page. Not sure if you see now. I need to stop sharing. Maybe never mind. So we created a tool that allows model contributors to basically evaluate their model based on these characteristics. And there are several class 1 models. I don't have the list in front of me, but there are some. Llama, which is a very, very important model. Like it created huge impact on everything, is not an open source model, or not really an open source model. And this is, by the way, that was the trigger or one of the triggers to work on this model openness framework, because there is a open washing, I don't know, there is open washing in the industry, and we really need to put some definitions here.
Is DeepSeek class 1 because they have a bunch of research paper, but I'm not sure if they put out the data sets.
So for sure they didn't put the data. So you know what? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they didn't put the data. And also there is a discussion about I forgot the word that they learned from other models.
Model theft.
Distillation. So
yeah, distillation.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. We invited them to evaluate their model on the Moth, but I don't know the results. I didn't check. If anyone here knows, please help me. Okay, let's conclude. So thank you everyone for joining and for listening. This is my LinkedIn page. You feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already connected. Yeah, let's open it for questions.
I really like the session. I just hope maybe you would have prolonged it a little bit so you could at least tackle some of the examples on the dimensions, show what you're tackling with, because you basically ran through them. I try to understand the challenges there and what you're doing to address those. It felt like just like an overview of those. So yeah, maybe next time.
Sounds good. And basically we, for now, we worked on the definition and the next, okay, now we finished with the definition, we published it. And again, this is published only like a week or so, maybe 2 weeks. But the next step is to basically to find the way to make the actual impact, to find a way to create something like I mentioned earlier, the Moth. We have the Moth and we created a tool. Maybe we will create a tool for this so companies can evaluate their level of responsibility or level of responsible AI, so they can address the problems that they have. Any questions? Yeah, Bill.
Hey, Ofer, thank you for the talk. I'm sorry I missed the first half. Maybe you touched upon it. I'm very curious to hear your stance about the criticism often against open sourcing weights and more, where bad actors from small terrorist criminals groups all the way to superpower nations that can take those models and weaponize it or do bad things with it, and we're giving it essentially for free to them, so they don't need to invest all the research that other good actors. What do you have? What's your stance on that?
So I have two opinions, two contradicting opinions about that. I personally I recognize the risk. I think it's a problem. I personally think that AI has potential to have an amazing impact on us, like amazingly good impact, but also on the other end, it has a lot of risks associated with it. And even if we are not talking about the Terminator, and we are just talking about fake news or deep fakes, this is problematic enough. And I recognize the problem, but on the other hand, I think that if we leave it only in the hand of a few corporates, it will be even worse. Yeah, it's a fair question, and I don't have it's not that I can give you like an answer that I feel very comfortable with. It's really problematic.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's a complicated world. Not everything has a black or white answer, for sure.
Yeah. Anyone else? We are almost out of time.
Ofer, don't you think that when it comes to AI that handles like you said, automatic driving or health or stuff like that, the current regulations or that whatever rules in place that they have will suffice in that case? Like I don't know, have a name for that, but I'm sure you are familiar with.
No, I don't think the current regulation. So it's really hard to run regulation because the technology is moving so fast. It is really not easy to stay ahead of the technology. So for sure, there will be holes in regulation all the time, and the regulators will try to seal it. There was, if we are going back to the previous question, there was a huge discussion about regulating, or yes or not, whether we should, or the EU should regulate open source or not. I think that regulation can never seal all the holes.
I understand. I just
mean,
sorry, Dvir, go ahead.
I'm not clear. Does it mean that the regulators should attempt always, or they should just give up and not even try?
Oh, of course. I personally think that regulation is kind of our only hope. So for sure, not giving up. I spend my time. I volunteer as part of the US effort to define AI safety, because I believe that there are risks, and because I believe that this is the solution. One is education, and the other is basically regulation. So no, I don't think we should give up on that.
No.
It's hard, but we need to do it.
But what I meant was that whatever you're doing here is basically, like you said at the beginning, is a recommendation at most.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to health or life safety on the road, you have to have some controls in place to prevent that 100%. Like, I don't know, I remember maybe, I don't know how long ago was it, 10 years ago that Google car, whatever, ran that lady because there was fog or whatever. And until today, and they promised us back then, in 2 years we'll have automatic driving, and still far from that. I think it's we're still going, just because they can't overcome those regulation rules that force them to identify everything and whatever, be ready. I don't know how to phrase this otherwise. But what I'm saying is, we have to put all our eggs in that basket of the regulation, because if you're just a recommendation, when it comes to health, we must have that other.
So I'm not sure I agree with you that we need to a self-driving car has to have like 100% success rate, because the other option is human being drivers, and I know myself. I know that the phone is ringing or the kids are shouting in the back. It's even harder for me to drive rather than an AI.
I understand, but when you develop like a medical device, you will not be able to ship it to market unless it's foolproof, for example.
No, even so, it really depends. If you save with this medical device 99% of the population, and 1% is will not be saved because it doesn't cover this specific area, I think it's still good. So it's I would say we need to check it case by case. But we are not a regulatory body. We are trying to promote this on other regulatory bodies.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. And Ofer, again, it's been great having you. And you know, would love to keep in touch and see how the foundation continues to develop the framework and how adoption goes. But yeah, you know, we're about a minute over time at this point. Again, can everyone give him a round of applause, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice day.